Welcome to the Booktopia podcast. I'm Sarah McDuling. I'm here with my co-worker Shanu Prasad, and we are both super excited to be talking to the amazing Ellie Marney.
Thank you. Attaching the word amazing to my name I find that a little bit weird, but it's lovely to be here. It's really lovely to be here.
I'm very excited to talk to you because I don't think we've had you on the podcast before, and I've been a long time fan.
It is just lovely to be interviewed, and I'd like to thank you for the support and, everyone who has reached out to me via email and via message to say that they've been loving the new book, which has amazed me. It's been really fantastic, the response I've had.
Let's talk about the new book. Can you tell the people listening a little bit about your now recently out in the world book, Nuns Shall Sleep?
So do you want the elevator pitch?
Yes, because it's such a good one.
The elevator pitch. All right. Okay, so in 1982, two teenagers, serial killer survivor Emma Lewis and US Marshal candidate Travis Bell, are recruited by FBI behavioural science to interview convicted juvenile murderers. But when they're drawn into the hunt for an active killer, a new killer who's targeting teenagers, they realise that their best source of information is a notorious teenage sociopath called Simon Goodmanson. And that's it.
I just love this book so much, and what a premise. I've heard it compared to Silence of the Lambs. I've also heard it compared to Sadie.
Yes.
Two awesome books that I absolutely love. So like a mashup of that. Where did you get the idea?
Well, where did I get the idea? I mean, I'm a long-time murderino, so I've been a true crime fan for a really long time. And I think I read Mindhunter by John Douglas, the book that was turned into the Netflix series. I read that back in my 20s, so a long time ago. And I was completely enthralled by that book. Just the idea that that the behavioural science unit was so innovative at that time, that they were doing completely new things, and that they decided to risk take by sending these FBI agents into prisons and mental institutions to interview serial killers, convicted serial killers, and so that they could learn more about that kind of psychopathology and figure out a way to catch these people faster. So I when I first read that, I was fascinated. I mean, serial killers are kind of evergreen, fascinating material, I think, in pop culture terms. But I'm also kind of fascinated by the detectives and their psychology as well, like what prompts them to do this for a job, and what's it like, and how they cope. So, that has always interested me. And then I was on writing retreat with a whole bunch of other writers, and I had just finished editing White Knight.
Another amazing book.
Thank you. That's very kind. And look, I finished one book, and I was really looking for a new idea, I guess. And I'd been spitballing all of these, alternative ideas, and I'd pitched a few to friends. And then C.S. Pakat, who is an amazing writer. She wrote the Captive Prince trilogy, and she's the writer of the Fence comics. She turned around and said, well, what do you really want to write? What do you want to write for you? What would, if you could write anything right now, what would you write? And I said, I would really love to write a serial killer thriller for teenagers. And she said, that sounds amazing. So she was basically enabling me right from the start.
She was so right.
So, yeah, look, it was great, I think it was just that I needed someone to give me permission to do it. I think I'd always been a bit, couldn't possibly do that. It'll be too dark. It'll be too scary. No one will want to publish this book. And even while I was writing the book, I was thinking, oh, this is probably going to be too hardcore. But yeah, and then I finished the book, and it was great to write. It was enormously fun to write. And then I pitched it to a new agent, and then they said yes, and then they pitched it to a publisher, and the publishers said yes. So I was like, wow, how did this happen? So it came out of those things. It came out of a long time interest in John Douglas and Mindhunter and The Silence of the Lambs, and reading Thomas Harris way back when. And then being given permission, being let off the leash, basically.
And it's really interesting that you did set it in the early 80s. And I have to admit that I didn't quite, I didn't read the blurb at all. So I just dive into the books. And so sometimes it takes me a little while to realize something that if you'd read the blurb, you would know straight away. And it took me, and I was like, why is he mentioning that she's got a shaved head? Why is that so strange? And then once I realised it was 1982, I'm like, oh, that would have been a bit more unusual.
Oh, and why don't they have mobile phones?
Yeah,
what's going on?
So
why don't they just call each other?
It was one of the reasons. I mean, obviously, as you're talking about, behavioural science unit that was actually the point when right quite at the early, he says that it's only been going for like a decade. And I was like, well, hang on a second. And I was like,
this is set in the past.
But is that why you chose to set the book in what is, even though I was alive then, is what is now called a historical time period.
Yeah, I know the early 80s are now historical fiction, which I find a bit mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But, it was one of the reasons why I decided to set it in 1982. I mean, that was about as far back as I wanted to push it. I didn't want to push it back into the mid-70s. I mean, behavioural science as a unit started up in 1972, and Howard Teeton and John Douglas were two of the key figures in the establishment of behavioural science and criminal profiling with the FBI. I mean, a lot of people have already watched the Netflix series Mindhunter. So they kind of, now it's more common knowledge that's when this all started.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I thought, well, within that first 10 years, I mean, they were still really nailing things down, I think, in the kind of mid-70s. And I thought, within that first 10 years, they would still be innovating, they'd still be trying new things and taking risks. And, what if they decided to hire a couple of teenagers to interview teenage offenders? And, what if one of the people that they interviewed turned out to be this incredibly manipulative teenage sociopath? The 1982 thing, that's where it really came from. And I tried to make it a little bit timeless too. I think.
Well, yeah, literally until you said the 10-year thing, I hadn't quite tweaked, and I think after that I still, except for the mobile phones, you probably couldn't really.
Whereas I read that blurb, searching for every possible detail about this book, because as soon as I heard about it, I was so excited to read it. So for me, the 1982 setting was such a draw card. I think this premise would hook me regardless of, you could set it any time and I would want to go on that journey. But having it in the 80s, being a fan of Mindhunter myself,
yes,
this is so perfect. I couldn't wait to dive in.
I mean, I was asked, we did have some discussions when the book was going through editorial about whether or not we should just make it contemporary. But the mobile phone thing is a real big deal. It really changes things.
Time, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. Really. Yeah. And in fact, it changed, if you want me to nerd out a little bit here, it actually changes.
Please.
It actually changes a whole heap of things around the whole serial killer investigative process. And in fact, the 70s and 80s were kind of what they call, and this is going to sound really weird, but it's considered the golden age of serial killers. And one of the reasons why we moved out of that period, not that there is fewer serial killers, but it just became harder to have people sort of mysteriously get lost, or everyone's connected now on mobile phones.
Yeah.
People don't hitchhike as much, starting by about mid-1980s, I think a lot of things socially and culturally started to change that meant people were less vulnerable as victims, you know. So actually the 70s and 80s was a good time for serial killers. And and there's some discussion too about how the 70s and 80s were kind of ripe psychologically because of the serial killers of that period came from families that had parents that were damaged by the experience of World War II and the Depression. So there's a lot of discussion about how serial killers are formed, and, you know, the whole nature nurture debate. And there's a lot of agreement that actually the kids that were raised by parents who were damaged in the World War and by the Depression and by the huge social and cultural changes of the 60s, actually, you know, that had a huge impact on people's psychology and the family dynamic generally. And so that's where a lot of serial killers seem to come from. And, you know, I guess
picked some really great ones for this book. Oh my goodness. I did read this book. I tried to start reading it. I knew it was. I'm not good with scary books, so I tried reading it during the day on a sunny weekend, and but I had to stop for, you know, life reasons. And then when I got back to reading it, it was just before I went to sleep. And, I had to keep in the very it's so fantastic, those last few chapters. But it was like when I watch a scary movie, I couldn't watch the whole thing. I had to keep stopping it and like read a bit, put it down, read a bit, put it down. So I read most of it very quickly, and then the last like 3 or 4 chapters, it took me like an hour to read, because I had to just keep pausing it, because you manage to get the tension and the so like you just really don't know what's going to happen. And
you don't.
That's what I think is so brilliant about this book, is that a lot of crime books you read, you just like, it's interesting, but you kind of know where it's going and you know what the end result's going to be. And in this one, you raise the stakes very high. And yeah, I was surprised, which I love. And I think
that state of uncertainty. Yeah, it's so hard to achieve in a crime novel, because you sort of go into it with a pretty firm idea that it's going to work out. Yeah. Plus, this is YA, so if anything, we should have been a bit more safe. But when the story is this good, all of that flies out of your head, and you're just thinking, "Oh my God, how is this going to work out?" And that final like act, keeping things spoiler free, but like the whole ending of this book was just, oh God, if it was possible to read like through your hands, like when you're watching a scary movie, I would have done it, but it's not possible.
That's why I had to keep putting it down and putting it back up, just to try and bring myself back into, because I was, even though my husband was like right next to me in the bed, it was still scary. But in saying that, it's not like it's something that you know, I didn't have nightmares afterwards, because, you know, it was just the act of reading it. You were really in the moment, and you were not. It felt quite real. Like I was quite there with the characters.
Well, and I thought about it afterwards. And I think part of that is that, again, I'm going to tiptoe and try and be spoiler free, but you've given your characters really strong emotional arcs in this book. So it's not just the action that's coming to a big culminating moment in the end. It's also all of this intense character work going on at the same time. So it's like this double whammy of suspense. And it's just like, bravo, because just talking about it's making me want to read it again.
Thank you. This is so amazing. I mean, look, I agree with you. I think crime fiction does have these sort of set tropes, and it's really easy to kind of fall into a habit with them, or to kind of let down your guard or something. I don't know. But to tell you the truth, I've had an enormous response. I've had so many people contacting me about that last 100 pages, and they keep saying, "Oh my God, that last 100 pages! What did you do?"
It's really masterful.
Which is really interesting to me, because I struggled with that last 100 pages. I had actually written the ending, and then I got about 50 pages before the end, and I was like, I got halfway through the final act, and I was like, this is not working. What's going on? And there was really no tension on the page, and I was really pulling my hair out. And then I gathered again my brain's trust, contacted all my writer friends who I know are great at brainstorming, and said, look, there's something going on here and I can't figure it out. What is going on? What's going wrong? And then so I had a couple of people throwing out ideas for me, and then I had to go back and really figure out what was the purpose of each character in the story. What was their drive, what was their motivation, and what was the one reason why they what was the worst thing that could possibly happen to them during the story. And I had to make them go through that. I had to confront them with that thing. What was their absolute worst fear? And they would have to live it in that final act for the tension to really be there. So yeah, I had to completely rewrite that last 100 pages, but it seems to have paid off. So that's really good.
Very interesting.
It definitely has. Because I was curious about how, and I always am curious when, about particularly crime novels, how you do fit them together, because there are so many elements that you have to make sure work. So do you sort of storyboard everything out beforehand, or do you, like you obviously said, you had kind of the way you wanted to end it and then work through it, but is that kind of where you sit, or are you like one of those people that has like 1,000 post-it notes all over their wall, or is it more just sort of you write and then you go back and check? Or
the post-it notes are very tempting. I could waste so much time making post-it notes and charts and things like that. Yeah, that would be my writer's procrastination dream.
Right.
So actually, I specifically don't do that, because I really am one of these people who would just get completely carried away with the storyboard and with the plot chart, which I have done in the past, and not actually write the book. So I was like, oh, okay. So I just need to sit down and actually plot it out on paper, which I did. So I write in big red and black notebooks, these really cheap notebooks. And Garth Nix and I were talking the other day about how we use the same brand of notebooks, and they became quite hard to get at the start of lockdown. So we were both like, oh, no,
what are we going to do?
Where are we getting our notebooks from? So I have these. So I have about 6 of these notebooks for None Shall Sleep, and I kept all of these really detailed notes, and particularly about character journeys and where they were kind of emotionally on the spectrum at each point. Like, where was Emma going emotionally? She has a real tumultuous journey, emotional journey throughout the story, and Travis as well, and Simon has an emotional journey, even though he's quite hard to read, and he's not in every scene. He's one of those characters that makes a big splash on the page, but he's not in every scene, so I had to track all of that. But I never started like this. I've been such a plotter for the last couple of books, particularly this book, but I started the Every series. I wrote that completely, straight onto the page. It was just completely pantsed right from the start.
I adore that series so much. I was saying to Shanu before the podcast, I think it's either 3, but potentially 4 times I've read the whole series.
Oh, that's so adorable.
I do remember just like checking before, like when I wasn't in books, when I was doing something else for a little bit, and I just remember like, okay, when's the next one out? When's the next one out? And being just like not being able to find out. Whereas now we're in a privileged position where you just harass the publishers to find out when the next book's coming. But
hey, when's my next hit arriving?
Speaking of, the book ends in a way that is very, it finishes the book, but it also ends in a way that we hope, Sarah and I, and I'm sure lots of
the door is open.
I wasn't going to ask this yet, but I'm just going to ask it now because we're talking about, series.
Is there going to be
something that maybe you might have reoccurring appearances from these wonderful characters?
I would love to write a sequel to this book. In fact, I have written 25,000 words of sequel for this book, but it will really depend on the reception for this one. For None Shall Sleep does well, then I guess I'll get the green light. And if I get the green light, I tell you what, you'll hear me yelling with joy all the way.
I'll join you.
Because
I just really love writing them. Yeah, I have totally enjoyed writing these characters. It's as easy as breathing. Some books are really hard, and for reasons I don't know you could dig into, I guess. But I think because I started this book originally just purely for my own pleasure, it was the book that I wanted to write for myself to read, and so I felt completely comfortable writing this book, and I would easily fall back into writing the sequel. And I've already kind of half mapped it out, and I'm just waiting to see what happens. But yeah, look, it's all in the lap of fate now, destiny,
And the
and we'll see
readers.
what
So
happens.
anyone
And the
listening to
readers.
this, go not just buy it, but tell everyone else to go and buy it too. Because once you've read it, you'll want to know more, and you'll definitely want to meet the characters again. There was such a great relationship between Travis and Emma, and I really like how do as you were talking about your every series, you just write such great characters that interact with
like
two main
partnerships.
characters. That's the word. Thank
Yeah.
you, Sarah. I was like, what's the word when two people are together but they're not together?
And they work really well together, and they're in something. What is that? Partnership.
But was that something that what is that draws you to writing kind of these these characters that can both be strong and vulnerable and sort of help each other to be kind of like, sounds terrible, like their best selves.
I think there was this. I like the idea of. I'm not a person who tends to prefer lone wolf characters. I really do like seeing the dynamic of a duo of some kind on the page, and also I think that can be interesting for the reader, whether whether it's a partnership or a relationship or whatever. It's really, it allows the reader to see the characters interacting, and there's always something happening. There's dialogue happening. It's not just one person kind of thinking for themselves what they're doing.
Yeah.
But Travis and Emma really have something special. He's specifically recruited basically to be there for her. I mean, even though, so she's recruited because she's had this experience of being the survivor of a serial killer, and so she has these skills, these unique skills. She can understand, the mentality, I guess, the psychology and how psychopaths think and behave and their process, and that allows her to have unique insight that the FBI can use. But she doesn't like the FBI. She basically had to rescue herself the first time that she had that experience, and so she's very, very suspicious of them when they approach her. She's never completely comfortable working in that environment. I think she just felt like, she's on her own. And then Travis is recruited. Obviously he has a connection with Simon Goodmanson as well. But he has this law enforcement background, which kind of focuses on duty and service. But he's not a macho character at all. Like, he's actually, that's the beauty of him. He's the complete opposite. In fact, he's kind of pure. He's like, he's got this real social intelligence, that he's very aware of her and her reactions, and he mediates between Emma and the world, and between Emma and the FBI, and because he's law enforcement, he can say, well, look, if we do it this way, if you talk to this person, you'll get answers. He's able to help her navigate that world, which otherwise I think she would really struggle with. And they're so great together on the page. They riff off each other really well. There's a nice tension there, which I really like. Maybe if I'm given the opportunity later, I'd like to explore that some more. But yeah, they were a great couple to write, even though they're not like a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to be like, but it's like, but you can see it, and you can also
the potential there.
Yeah. But that's what I like because I just think it just makes it so much more interesting to read when you again, it's the same as the actual crime aspect of it, is that you're just not sure where it's going to end, or how it's going to how their relationship's going to develop exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, which I think is just great to read books like that where you're not, it's great sometimes to know straight away what you're getting into. It's also good, particularly in the when you've already got the crime, and then I can't get over how amazingly characterized you made Simon as.
Oh my God, I was going to say that because I think that when you've got a villain that just tremendously spectacular, it would be really hard to keep things balanced because I'm as interested. Like, I love when he shows up and it's amazing, but I'm totally invested in Emma and Travis as well. And I think that's rare when you've got a villain this good.
Simon was so hard to write, and I've got this terrible habit of writing these genius characters when I myself am not a genius.
Like find all this stuff out that they would know.
It's like as soon as I realized what he was going to be like, and I was like, oh, and then their FBI handler Edmund Cooper has this line where he says, oh, he got in IQ tested at 14, he's in the 98th percentile, and I was like, God damn, I've written another genius again. I am not a genius. It is really hard to write genius characters when, like, he's 10 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. He's also, unique psychology. Like he's got that psychopath type psychology, and I was just like, this is great for me writing this guy. How am I going to write this guy? He was really the scenes with him and Emma took a long time because he's always so fast. He's so much further ahead of everybody else in the conversation. And you kind of have to write that, but you don't want him to sound like he's 45 years old, like he's still a teenager. He's only 19, and you have to kind of make that aspect of him believable, that although he's hyper intelligent and he's a psychopath, he's also he's a young guy, and he wouldn't want to think of himself as doing stupid things, but he does still have a kind of an emotional reaction, and he gets cocky and things like that, and he does make mistakes. He's not infallible.
And he's not invulnerable. He's
not invulnerable either. Yeah, and he can be taken by surprise, and so I really did have to work quite hard on Simon's dialogue, but he is a joy to write. He's so cutting.
And you can really, really picture him in your mind the whole time. You set the scene of where his asylum so well that, and I can imagine Pradeep, who is his, I guess his personal jailer almost, right?
Yeah,
because not being allowed to be certain, distance and stuff. So when that, when you break that distance, it really just there is a that reaction. Right there. You've set it up so well that is not to be breached. There is like it's a Grand Canyon.
Yes,
but it's not really. So,
and
I thought that wonderful.
And Simon and Pradeep have this really interesting relationship too. They have this real formality and politeness and courtesy between each other, and everyone who reacts with who kind of interacts with Simon seems to have a different experience of what he's like, And I was talking to Emma Viskage the other night, and there was a question from the audience as like, do you think, do you think bad people know that they're bad? Do you think?
Oh yeah.
And I said, well, I said at that time that I thought it was interesting because I don't think most people who do bad things realise that they're the villain. They think that they're the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And Simon is unique because he knows that he's bad. He knows that he's a villain, and he knows that what he does is evil, but he's kind of embraced that. So he's decided that that's just going to be his thing.
Okay with it.
Yeah, and he's okay with it. He's kind of reconciled himself to the fact that this is how he is. This is how he works. It's how his mind works. So yeah, he's really, really fun to write and hard to write too.
The other character that really sticks in your mind, I mean they all do, but sticks in your mind is the fact that you created him a twin sister.
Yes.
And that, I don't want to talk too much about what she is or isn't, because I don't, again, giving the story away, but the having her as sort of like a foil to him.
Yes.
So they're like, what were you trying to achieve having her in the story?
I did want Simon to have a kind of vulnerability, and I also wanted, so she really is a bit of a weak point for him. Kristen's delightful, and she's so odd.
So good.
She's completely eccentric, and she's kind of like this, lightweight. And she's always smiling, and she seems really, I don't know, ethereal or something about her. And then it's not until you realize, and when she starts talking, and then she starts sharing, something of herself, and then you realize that, oh, okay, so you're actually really damaged, and she's everything about her has developed it's been dependent on her brother, her twin. She's kind of grown up in Simon's shadow her whole life, and it's impacted on her in really, really strange ways psychologically. So she's a very interesting character, and I did want her to be, a particular weak spot for Simon, and also that she throws an element of chaos into Emma and Travis's, arrangements with the FBI and everything to do with their investigation. And Kristen is she just kind of sprinkles fairy dust and chaos dust basically on everything. So she's really interesting, and it's nice to talk about her, because she often sort of seems to fall by the wayside as a character. And
no, I don't think that the book would have worked as
no,
well.
It wouldn't work.
No, she needed to be. She 100% needed to be there. I think it was.
I found her very interesting and consistently surprising, because when you're in a crime novel and a twin shows up, there's a lot of expectations there about where we're going. And without giving away details, she consistently surprised me, and
that's
great. That is refreshing and amazing.
I wanted to throw her in as a chaos element, and I think she works really well. And also I think she's kind of a nice person too, Everyone's kind of driven, in the book everyone's driven in certain ways, and there's a lot of intensity there, but Kristen is kind of a pure soul in lots of ways. She's sort of, just kind of floats through, and she doesn't realize how much of an impact she's having, but her impact is really huge.
She's interesting in her own right as a character, but her effect on Simon, like being like this walking vulnerability out there, is amazing as well. And I think, it might have been easy to have her exist just to serve the Simon character, but instead she's her own, her own important character in the story. Really liked it. It's just a great cast. This is a solid. I can't wait for this next book, because I'm sure it's
I so hope I get to write it, but I guess we'll see. That would be amazing. Yeah, it would be so much fun to write.
We do normally ask what's up next for the Authors podcast. I will not accept any answers except the sequel to Nunchuck. I do feel like we should ask, are you working on other things or anything else coming up that you're able to talk about?
I am. Actually, I'm trying to write the last 10,000 words. It has been incredibly busy the last couple of weeks. So I've got literally the last few chapters of a new book, which I'm trying to complete, and it's due to come out next year, which is really exciting. And it's a real change of pace. So it's historical fiction again, except I've thrown it back another 40 years. So it's 1943.
Oh, my God.
And I can't give too much away, okay, because we haven't made the announcement yet. But it's 1943, and Enigma machines and plucky girl gangs and murder mysteries, of course.
Oh my God!
So
how do you do this? Everything you decide to write is something that I just didn't even realize I was longing for. Like, that sounds so good.
I hope you like it. I hope you like it. Fingers crossed. Hopefully I can figure out a good ending for this one.
Is there a kind of idea about when announcements for that will be made?
I really don't know. Everything in publishing at the moment is a little bit up in the air and a little bit slower than it has been in the past. So yeah. As soon as I hear word, I'll let everyone know. But yeah.
In the meantime, that's okay because we can reread
None Shall Sleep.
None Shall Sleep and the whole Ellie Marney backlist.
I'm about to check out the audiobook, which
Who's the narrator?
Oh my goodness. I just found this out in the last couple of days and it's blown my mind. So the audiobook has been produced with a full cast, which is really cool.
Wow.
And the guy who's playing Simon is Jake Abel, who is he's a character actor, and he played Luke in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And he's also a regular on Supernatural, which is really cool. So
amazing.
Yeah. So, and he's just come off voicing Edward Cullen for Midnight Sun. And now, so he's gone from playing a teenage vampire to playing a teenage serial killer.
I think that's almost. That's
so good.
So it's going to be really interesting, and I'm trying to download my audiobook copy right now so I can have a listen. I've heard a little tiny excerpt, and it sounds fantastic. So I'm really excited to listen to the whole thing.
I love when there's a full cast.
No, it's so good.
Oh wow!
Especially because you do get all the changes of perspective. That's written from different perspectives in the book, so it makes a lot more sense for them to have done that. But that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. I can't wait.
So I mean, you mentioned a little bit about how publishing is a little bit in a strange place at the moment, as is everything. But what's it been like for you to have a book come out at this time? Like, it would be a very, very different experience.
Yeah, look, it has been different, and I think originally I was sort of stressed out about it, and I was like, oh man, and even in July, August, I was like, oh, maybe lockdown will end before, and then of course the second wave came and I was just like, dang it. But, to tell you the truth, the whole digital launch thing has been pretty good because it's enabled me. I mean, I live a couple of hours outside Melbourne, so it's actually quite hard for me to get down to live events anyway. So, it's like 4 hours worth of travel and I usually end up staying the night and crashing at my sister-in-law's house. But yeah, so having digital events has been really fantastic. So, it's enabled me to go to New York and go to Texas. I've got an interview with Jennifer Lynn Barnes in Texas on Saturday morning, which is really wild.
I love her too.
It's been really eye-opening, and I think it's given us all the book authors that I know a bit of an idea of new things to try and new things to do, and I just think we'll adapt, and some things we'll probably take on board and continue to use. So that's been really good. It's the biggest thing that's been difficult, I think, has been a lot of releases got pushed back. So actually, the fall schedule for America is really busy right now. And, I think there was the expectation, that things would start to settle down, but of course that never really happened. So a whole bunch of titles coming out in September, October. So I think the publishing schedules have been a little bit all over the place for a lot of people. And the only other thing, of course, is that it's been hard to get hard copy into readers' hands because bookstores have been really struggling. Independent bookstores have been trying to get and Booktopia, I'm sure you guys have been struggling with post and trying to get all deliveries organised, and that has been really hard. Distribution has been tough.
Yeah, I think that's what's great, that you've got the audiobook now, and we've got ebooks now as another option.
I know, it's been really good.
Rather than just, as we said, because, sometimes it is. I mean, we've been very, very lucky that we work really closely with Australia Post. And they've done a really great job really getting our parcels out around
How
Australia.
How busy must they be? I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So we've been really fortunate, and I think it's been great that we also, at Booktopia, we also support, you definitely say to people, buy from us and your local bookstore. But where people, a lot of people don't even have a local bookstore because they live, remotely, and it's great that we've been able to, get the books out to everyone. And now that, we are doing more online events, it really can bring in all those people, as you said, that live regionally or rurally.
That's right.
That haven't had the opportunities before, and get them to experience and find out about new authors or authors that they haven't, just haven't had
the chance
read.
Before.
Yeah,
Totally.
Said, good and bad together.
Good and bad. I mean, I really do miss seeing people in person and giving people hugs. And it's been really hard for signing. But book plates are still a thing, and
that's right. And they're making a comeback. Who would have thought?
They
Last
are.
year we would have just been like, nope, that is just not okay. Now they're like, know what? It's still a signature. It's still being touched by the author.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's and the other thing is, everyone's in the same boat. Every author I know is dealing with this. So it's everyone's sort of trying to support each other and give each other a bit of a boost, and that's been really nice. So look, been good, been bad, but we seem to be getting through it okay, and that's hopefully what we all will do when COVID is over.
Okay, well, we've managed to go a bit over time, as I suspected we might, because it's been so fun talking to you. But Ellie, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely.
And podcast listeners, you can get a copy of None Shall Sleep and any of Ellie Marney's previous books, all of which I recommend, at your local bookstore if possible, or if you can't make it there or you don't have a local bookstore, we would love you to come and buy it from us, Booktopia.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Booktopia podcast channel. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on SoundCloud and iTunes for free, and get access to hundreds of author discussions, book analysis pieces, and more. Or, if your eyes need a workout, head to Booktopia TV on YouTube. Don't forget, for all books featured in this podcast, and for access to a whole bunch of other fun content on our blog, head to Booktopia, Australia's local bookstore, at booktopia.com.au.